If you're a fan of classic 4x4s, this one's for you. The story starts when Nick gets a call from a friend at a local junkyard about two exceptional Mercedes-Benz 280 GE G-Wagons that just arrived. For a classic as iconic as this, Nick dropped everything and rushed over. The first G-Wagon he inspected had a stunning plaid-patterned interior that immediately caught his eye. Aside from the strong smell of animal urine, the inside was surprisingly clean. Unfortunately, it was an automatic. His friend mentioned that both vehicles had been sitting for over 10 years before being sent to the yard. The exterior was in great shape, though all four tires were flat. A quick look underneath revealed a solid chassis and frame with almost no rust. It looked practically new. The engine bay was complete, with no missing parts, and was also remarkably clean. If only it had been a manual, it would have been a perfect candidate. He then moved on to the second one, also a 1980 model, this one in a vibrant red. The first thing he noticed was the cracked windshield, but like the other one, the body was well preserved. Opening the door, Nick was thrilled to find a set of 80s-era Recaro seats. They were faded but otherwise undamaged, and best of all, there was no foul odor inside. Most importantly, this was the manual transmission he was looking for. The interior looked far too clean for a vehicle that had been sitting for a decade. Even the original owner's manual was still in the glove box. After his initial excitement, he popped the hood. The engine bay looked a bit older and was covered in cobwebs, but a thorough inspection confirmed that everything was there, just hidden under a thick layer of dust. The undercarriage on this one had more surface rust and signs of a minor fluid leak. The shock absorbers were heavily rusted and would likely need replacing, but these were minor issues. Overall, it was still a prime example. To sweeten the deal, this G-Wagon's tires were in much better shape, and stashed in the back were several almost new spare tires. Nick was torn. If he had the funds, he would have bought both, but after weighing the pros and cons, he chose the red manual 280 GE. He quickly arranged for a trailer, loaded up his new toy, and headed home. Back in his garage, he wasted no time. After clearing out the cobwebs, he started with the air intake. He inspected the airflow sensor plate, which adds fuel to the injectors as air is drawn in. It moved freely, as did the throttle linkage. The main throttle body was located beneath it. Given how long the vehicle had sat, Nick wasn't about to just crank the engine over. To avoid potential damage, he decided to pull the spark plugs first, carefully labeling each wire to maintain the firing order. The first plug he removed wasn't new, but it was free of rust, a great sign. Using a borescope, he peered into the cylinders. As he had hoped, they were clean, with no signs of water intrusion or rust. After checking every cylinder, he breathed a sigh of relief. He then inspected the distributor, which looked brand new inside, so he simply put it back together. To help free up the engine, he mixed some automatic transmission fluid and acetone and sprayed it into each cylinder to act as a penetrating lubricant. While the mixture soaked, he took a closer look at the undercarriage. The rust wasn't as bad as it first appeared. Most of it was just flaking undercoating. The metal beneath was solid, and the structural components were strong. The exhaust had only light surface rusts with no holes. The fuel tank looked rusty, but it was just the protective outer metal shield. He did find some issues, however. The fuel lines were badly deteriorated, and there were some rusted-through spots along the lower body edges. On the bright side, the radiator and tires were in excellent condition.
He tried charging the original battery and was pleased to see the dash lights come on, but that was it. Mashing buttons and turning the key did nothing, though the hand crank windows worked perfectly. In the glove box, he found a note in German and a small plastic part in a baggie he couldn't identify. The G-Wagon was also equipped with a fire extinguisher and a first aid kit. As he got out of the car, he noticed that his random button pushing had turned on one of the fog lights. A little while later, Nick gently began turning the crankshaft by hand. The engine moved with minimal effort, confirming it wasn't seized. Before trying to start it, he inspected the wiring for the alternator and starter. The insulation was hardened, but the copper wires inside were fine. He cleaned up the terminals and reconnected them. A check of the dipstick showed the oil was in decent shape and at a sufficient level to attempt to start. He hopped in, turned the key, and nothing. The old battery was dead. He hooked up a jump pack and tried again. This time, the engine cranked but wouldn't fire. Suspecting a fuel issue, he cracked open an injector line and was hit with the pungent smell of ancient gasoline. The fuel pump was working, but the fuel was unusable. He pulled what he thought was the fuel pump fuse to disable it. He then cleaned and tested with spark plugs, confirming they all produced a strong spark. He also installed a new battery. With the fuel pump supposedly off, he sprayed starting fluid into the intake. The engine fired up instantly. But his celebration was cut short when he saw a massive fuel leak under the car. The fuel pump was still running. He had pulled the wrong fuse. Despite the leak, he was thrilled. The new battery had also brought the main headlights to life. On a subsequent start, he was pleased to see very little smoke from the exhaust. He also checked the radiator and found it full of bright green coolant. A quick test of the power steering confirmed it was working. The odometer read just 18,700 miles, making Nick feel like he got an incredible deal. His next step was to check the valve train. Under the valve cover, the inline-six DOHC engine looked beautiful. Aside from some minor carbon buildup, the cams, chains, and sprockets were in perfect, unworn condition and appeared to be all original. The only things that needed replacing were the old hardened gaskets. He had a new set ready and swapped them out, also adding a bottle of engine oil flesh to help clean out internal grime during the next startup. With the valve cover back on, he ran the engine for a couple of minutes to circulate the cleaning oil. Now it was time to tackle the fuel system, the most deteriorated part of the vehicle. The lines and filters were shot. He removed the fuel pump, which, despite working, looked terrible, along with the pre-filter and main filter. He then drained the foul-smelling, discolored gasoline from the tank. To demonstrate how bad it was, he poured a little on the ground and tried to light it with a torch. It barely flickered before going out. He used the bore scope to inspect the inside of the tank and was surprisingly pleasant to find it was clean, with the original coating intact and only a few minor rust spots. The tank was salvageable, but the rest of the fuel system components were junk. While waiting for new parts to arrive, Nick decided to replace the coolant. Though the color looked good, it was too old to trust. He also swapped out the thermostat with a new one he had in stock and replaced all the old brittle radiator hoses. Cleaning out the back of the G-Wagon, he discovered a pair of vintage wooden speaker boxes, a quirky addition, whether factory or aftermarket. The plaid rear seats were in pristine condition.
Soon, the new fuel lines, filters, and pump arrived. He installed everything and added a fuel system cleaner to the tank before filling it with fresh gas. He started the engine again and let it run. It was stable, but the idle was very high and the engine was shake-quiet. He suspected a clogged injector. After a few minutes, the shaking stopped, but the idle remained high. He couldn't find any vacuum leaks, so he decided to pull the injectors for a cleaning once the engine cooled down. Hours later, he removed the injectors and found them caked in carbon and grime. He cleaned them using his own methods, followed by a run in an ultrasonic cleaner with a degreasing solution. After reinstalling the freshly cleaned injectors, he drained the old blackened engine oil and replaced the oil filter. With fresh oil in, he started the engine one more time. It ran smoothly, with a perfect idle, and still no smoke from the exhaust, a testament to old-school German engineering, as Nick put it. The next hurdle was the transmission. He couldn't shift gears and the clutch wasn't working. A check of the clutch and brake fluid reservoir revealed it was full of water. He also found a leak from the clutch slave cylinder. The fix was simple. He replaced the bad slave cylinder, flushed the entire system, and refilled it with fresh brake fluid. After bleeding the air out, the clutch and shifter worked perfectly. He even figured out how to engage the four-wheel drive system using the owner's manual. Next up were the brakes. The pads and rotors had plenty of life left, but the caliper pistons were seized. Fortunately, they weren't damaged, just stuck. He managed to free them up, cleaned out the rust, and reassembled them. After servicing all four brakes and replacing the fluid, he moved to the undercarriage, changing the transmission and differential gear oil and lubricating every moving part he could find. He finished up by replacing some aging wires in the engine bay and giving the interior a deep clean. Finally, it was time for a real test drive. He took it for a spin on the local roads to check its performance, then filled it up at a gas station before heading home. There was one last thing to do: replace the cracked windshield, which a mobile glass company handled on site. He also installed the new shock absorbers he'd ordered and gave the rusty spots on the undercarriage a quick coat of black spray paint. With the 280 GE fully resurrected, Nick brought his wife out to teach her how to drive a manual. Though nervous at first, she got the hang of it in about a half hour. To To cap it all off, he found a bumpy field to test out the G-Wagon's legendary off-road capabilities.